So Dominic Clapham, the part of the litigation team and the face of the litigation team, hired by the whatever the fuck real estate agency or property management company, or I don't even know what it is, but it's certainly not what it appears to be, and I can't make the Tenancy Tribunal understand any facts. But anyway, so I've got this hearing coming up on the 6th, and I'm going to be moving before then. And because I've just really got to get myself to safety, and but moving when you're already in a like a can't cope kind of breakdown has really not improved my ability to cope, although it is it's the better way forward overall. It's created sort of problems that I'm finding very difficult to deal with. And Dominic Clapham claims, and he doesn't, there's no way he believes it, and I don't know why anyone believes it, that I have plenty of support, judging by the number of people that I've copied into emails to him and the Tenancy Tribunal. Like, it's like, I don't know if he's, it's really difficult to tell with sociopaths, if they're really stupid or they just think everyone else is really stupid. It doesn't help when the people in power are that stupid, but it's like, I don't have any support, so, I've desperately copied people in hoping to get some sort of help, but I've virtually never had any, and I've had a little bit of help from some people, but it hasn't been effective help because it's been help that hasn't really been relevant to my problems, as very much well meant as it has been. And I have some new social support now, and that's to help me get into respite and that kind of thing. But it's not she's not a common, or, she's not a sort of a general sort of support person. But, I just thought I would read what I just sent her. Because it explains a lot about what I'm going through. I said, hi, name, a bit of an SOS, I am really not coping, as I sent this yesterday or the day before. I'm really not coping. It's very much physical, but likely from stress. Since seeing you on Saturday, I've gone downhill. It's good to have a plan to move, but that's put a giant extra pressure on me that requires far more coordination and persistence than I can possibly cope with. This morning I had a very tearful, wailing collapse trying to get myself out of bed to pick up my pharmacy meds and buy bread, which, I think it's probably going to be about 7,500 steps, I think, to do that kind of round trip. Which is great if you don't have chronic fatigue syndrome, but with chronic fatigue syndrome, and especially at this stage, I've really it's hard to express the enormity of this problem, but I will, rather than ramble, I'll just continue to read what I wrote, because I think it explains. Had a tearful waiting collapse trying to get myself out of bed to pick up my pharmacy meds and buy bread. Just the thought of having to do it, it's like, oh God, I can't. So, and I said, ended up getting a free meds delivery, but had to pay to get groceries delivered. My housework is building up, and I know even if I can make myself do it, I will pay dearly for it. I just do not have the energy available. I am paying every day for the day before, and it's snowballing. I can't keep a thought in my head. My brain is done. And people don't recognise that because there is a level in which I can function, and I think people expect to see the brain as a whole just start to decline on a spectrum, but it's not the whole brain, it's parts of the brain. The brain is compartmentalised into very different functions. So I said I can't keep a thought in my head, my brain is done. But the TT torture and stonewalling prevails. I've got lots to plan. I'm really not sure I can bounce back this time. I've asked my GP to refer me for respite again, because we put that on hold while I was just like, do you know what, I can't go into respite when the Tenancy Tribunal and the Homewood and it appears and as a team are coming for me. Like, respite doesn't get rid of those predators. I'm really not sure I can bounce back this time. I've asked my GP to refer me for respite again, but I need so much more. Is this appropriate or possible for me? I linked in something else that was a support service, kind of more at home kind of care. I said I just need to get through the move and have someone help me communicate to various people involved. It's really difficult communicating to people when you have this cognitive disability and it becomes a communication disability, and people, people just don't take kindly to people with these problems. It just seems like personality defect or something, and you really need to be cushioned from it and have someone else sort of step in. And when it comes to moving and all things involved moving, like, you've got to push quite hard to get things done, and I just hard enough to even know what I need to do. And I got a nice reply back, and she says, how are you feeling today? Have you been able to get through some mindful breathing and remind yourself that there's only one of you, and that means taking and doing one thing at a time. Focus as much as you can on one task to complete. Then once that is done, tick it off. If you work well with writing things, create a list and work through it slowly. See ticks or crossing things off that have been physically off, and releases some of the weight you carry on your shoulders. And I said, thank you, name. I have all the task management and stress management skills known to man. The problem is my brain just won't work, and my body feels like it's crumbling. I know my brain is switching off like an overload switch on a power board. Too much to cope with, and it turns off for safety. Nothing I can do about it. I need help. Another power outlet, if you will. It really is a disability, not a lack of knowledge. Think of an All Black with a torn ligament. No matter how much coaching about rugby you give him, he still can't play on the injury. And then I'm quoting from an article that I often send people just because it's a very quick, short and concise. Exhaustion syndrome can be described in 3 phases. So I have exhaustion syndrome, and the full name really is stress-induced or exhaustion syndrome, and it's the new name for burnout, and it's a new conception of burnout, hence the new name, because with neuroimaging, as I've said before, we now know it's not just this vague sort of undiagnosable, it's never been a medical diagnosis, but it is a medical diagnosis now, and it has a new name because we know more about it. Exhaustion syndrome can be described in 3 phases. So the 3rd phase is recovery, and I don't list that here because I've never, in 18 months, or getting on for probably 19 months now, I've never had a chance to enter that recovery phase. and it's not from my doing, it's just that people will not stop victimising me. And no, that isn't a persecution syndrome, it's just something that happens once you sort of fall down and you end up just sort of sinking into a kind of strange underworld where no one can really see you but other victimisers. It's very strange because no one really understands what's wrong with you. It can look like depression or laziness, and that's that's secondary abuse partly, but yeah. So no, what's happening to me is very common. And I like the Pro Bono Law Centre, like it described on its website, it said, people with socioeconomic disadvantage, which is me. That's not how necessarily I was born, but that's what I'm in as an adult. I'm not connected to anybody who can help me. It's more than just money. It's just this whole syndrome, it's just this whole life syndrome where not only do you need more legal help than the average person is because of your circumstances, because predators prey on vulnerable people, you have less money to get legal services, so you're doubly disadvantaged and very, very badly, unlike people who don't have predators and they have lots of money to prey on people legally. So exhaustion syndrome can be described in 3 phases. The first is the prodromal phase, which may produce physical and mental stress symptoms, but where the person is still functional in their daily life. And that started for me in about January 2021. Is that right? No, 2022. Yeah. The problem started about November 2021, and the physical stress symptoms started to appear in about January, February 2022. I couldn't get anyone to pay any attention to them. It's only it's only since Neil Jameson and then my GP now that they get it. I'm in a very advanced state of illness now. Most people understand that the symptoms are due to excessive stress and change their lifestyle. So being abused by a successive mob of horrible people is not a lifestyle. I can't do anything about it, but I tried. I moved islands. I've been as careful as I can, but you basically have to not breathe. If you're a very vulnerable person, it's like living out in the savannah as a little fucking dick or something. I don't know where dicks live. I don't know, little bloody antelope thingy. Like, you can't take anyone on. You just have to basically pretend you don't exist. No, it's not a lifestyle. If nothing is done about the situation, a person risks entering the acute phase. This often happens quickly and suddenly, the source of the expression to hit the wall. And that's happened to me several times. And it happened to me it happened before I left Wellington, but I couldn't, my survival skills managed to get me through somehow, agonisingly through, to actually get into Christchurch and get to my accommodation, and then I just flopped. And then my nasty, stupid family, and it really is a combination of nastiness and stupidity. It was nastiness on the part of my mother, who, because I was desperate to be alone and just have time to rest, as she knew, because I hadn't had that for a very long time. I needed alone time desperately, and I needed just rest, and I needed nothing to do with people. I needed that time to recover. and there's a manipulation tactic known as taking on the servant role, and it's when you do great harm to people in plain sight on purpose by pretending to be the servant to try to help them, and it's very plausible to other people. So what she said to my aunt and uncle in Rangiora was that she was worried about me and wanted them to check on me, and so they began harassing me at my home. And that's stupid on their part, but what was evil on their part was becoming angry with me when I told them this is making my circumstances much worse, I need you to stop. And instead they intensified the harassment, and then they got me. It was them really who started the process to get me committed to a psychiatric hospital by absolutely just lying about me. And the psychiatric hospital obviously is breaking the law by putting on my medical records shit that people I'm related to put on my record, like that's against the law. So it was like, so then that was the nightmare was going, and then I left there and moved to this place, and then the nightmare started, and it's just like, oh my god. And yeah, like I'd never had a chance to rest. And that's what predators do as well. Like they know that if they just keep you running, then you will tire out, and they just sit there and they just sit there on their armchair watching you on their treadmill, wearing yourself out, getting sicker and sicker. So if nothing is done about the situation, a person risks entering the acute phase. This often happens quickly and suddenly. The source of expression to hit the wall. The acute phase may last up to a few weeks when the person is not functional at all. And I pushed through that as hard as I could because I had to, and it was awful. Really, really awful. And I think I sustained a lot of damage from that. It may be impossible to get out of bed, think clearly or concentrate. The ability to multitask disappears, And then I had people just coming at me all the time, and it was that kind of situation where it's like I can't do anything to help myself because I'm basically completely disabled, and the only way that I can escape this is by dying. That's not a psychiatric problem. That's basically, you're just wounded on a battlefield, like with snipers and grenades, like, like no one's alive to drag you out. What are you going to do, It's like, it's not a psychiatric problem. Feelings of desperation and panic may arise, which can be misinterpreted as depression. Yep, and your dumbass narcissist family, and I realise now that I come from a narcissistic family. It's not just my mother, it's the whole family, because there are such things. I've learned so much, like there's never a hope of being believed by them, let alone given any respect for making your own decisions about your own well-being. So they just like chuck you in the loony bin, and they dust their hands off and congratulate themselves for being caring, and then you don't get the help that you need. And so then I see, this is what I'm talking about, and I just repeated those two bits. The acute phase may last up to a few weeks when the person is not functional at all. It may be impossible to get out of bed, think clearly or concentrate. The ability to multitask disappears. And so I said, I'm asking for help now before I can't communicate at all. This has happened to me before. I just switched off like a robot, and yes, people thought it was depression, and they tried to jolly me along and drag me out of my home, which was a fucking nightmare and worsened my condition immensely. Then I ended up in the loony bin. I'm switching off now, and that is a self-protective physical strategy that is not going to help me move. I'm scared. And then I got quick reply, just about, because she's incredibly busy. There's a lot of people like me, and a lot of people who are unlike me, but need a lot of help. And I think some countries are catching on to problems like mine that seem psychiatric, but they're not. They are very much physical. Like the idea that if your house isn't tidy, you're mentally ill. Well, how about physically ill? Does anyone ever think that physical illness prevents people from keeping up their daily routines? It's just weird. It's the more obvious option. Anyway, then I just sort of gave a few of my deadlines that are coming up, and it's just insane. It's all too much for one person, let alone a person who's very unwell. I said, and there's the CFS. And you can see from another angle how I got to this collapse and why I must not try to push through, which is a really big mistake that people make. Just push through, you can do it. Just pace yourself and push through. And it's like, well, of course I'm pacing myself, but you can't pace yourself with nothing. You have to have something to work with. And the danger with CFS is a little bit more complex, because you may think that you've got energy that you don't actually have. And that's a mechanism that I cannot I can't explain, but it ends up you just borrowing from yourself. And there's a good analogy here. It says, imagine your energy is money stored in a bank account. This is from another article. Because of MECFS or FM, I don't know what FM is, your account has a very low balance. Well, healthy people are able to store up energy for a day's activity with 7 or 8 hours of rest at night. People with either condition may get only a few hours of energy from a night's rest. The small amount of energy available makes it easy to spend more energy than you have and overdraw your account. That's what's happened to me. There is often a big service charge, intense symptoms if you overdraw your account. Once you're overdrawn, you have to deposit more to your account in the form of rest. And then I just sort of wrote some things about what I need to do and how I just can't do them. And I just find it, even really understanding people, I just find it so hard to get through. You cannot, it's like you can't walk off a compound fracture. No, you can't push through chronic fatigue syndrome, and you can't push through exhaustion disorder, because you are making it worse. It's like you can't. It's like trying to drink off alcohol poisoning. That's how much sense it makes. And so at the moment, I am lying on my sofa, and I'm deliberately taking as much rest as I can. And I feel at the moment like I could get up and do some things, but I don't think that feeling is genuine. And my worry, I wouldn't mind if I had a respite date and whatever lined up, so I know when I can just drop everything and collapse. And, you know, one of the reasons for respite that has been, you know, put to me for a reason to go in, because I do like being at home. I really prefer to be at home, and I've said, look, respite for me would just be, you know, the wolves backing away from my door and just being at home. But, you know, like, as has been pointed out to me by my GP and by the support person, the respite support person, there's two reasons to go into respite, which isn't just rest, it's actually getting care, and it's having, like, you know, meals cooked and cleaning done and that kind of thing, because I'm really struggling. And it's like I've got so much to do, and there's no way that I can prepare for the Tenancy Tribunal, and they're just going to plough ahead, and it's like, I'm in the right, I have all the proof, but it kind of doesn't matter really, because they have never followed the law so far. And by the law I mean they haven't followed the Residential Tenancies Act. The Tenancy Tribunal that's there to administer, you know, to administer the justice side of it. Like, you know, I have put it to the registrar. He said, I just said, look, if I don't see any sign of the adjudicators obeying the law this week, then I'm just, you know, I'm just sort of moving on. The unfortunate thing about that is that, you know, these predators, Homewood and their litigation scum, you know, are trying to get damages from me for things that I haven't done. And that could be possibly $8,000, which would go as probably an attachment order on my income, which is the supported living payments. And yeah, the really scary thing that I've said to so many people is that the adjudicators are not really the brightest crayons in the box, but they certainly think they are. People who misunderstand the Dunning-Kruger effect would call that you know, they would say they have Dunning-Kruger syndrome, but it's not a syndrome, it's an effect, and it happens to all of us. But that's the idea. They're exceptionally arrogant and don't know very much, and so that just becomes a vicious cycle where they won't entertain anything that they haven't. You know, it's just those people who think that they've got nothing to learn, and, like, you know, if I don't see any cooperation with the law or morality or logic, I mean, there's just so many, like, it just hurts my brain. Like, so many of the things that they're claiming are just logically, physically, like physics, like just not possible. Like, they're claiming all these contradictory things, and, like, the only people who can believe contradictory things are insane people, and I'm not in the mood, you know. And I think putting a lot of effort and energy that would cost me a lot to try to get through to these people when they don't have the ability to understand, and the ability I would probably include in that umbrella the humility to even listen, the intellectual humility. You know, it's almost like, well, okay, well, maybe I just write off $8,000. Now, that's not $8,000 that I have, that's $8,000 that's going to be taken from my weekly income, and a chunk that would seem to those idiots to be manageable, but, you know, it would be like $30 or $40 a week, which is massive to a beneficiary. I mean, you don't usually have that as discretionary income, you know. And but it's this kind of desperate situation that you're in, and it's like, you know, some people can't understand the decisions you make. Like, oh my God, like you're putting, you know, you've got a lot to lose, and it's like, I'm not making this decision because I think it's like a winning option. I'm making this decision because I'm disabled. Like, I'm really sick. And it's like jumping out of a, it's like jumping out of a building on fire. It's like, oh, do you really want to do that? You could like break your legs. And it's like, I know I'm going to break my legs. So, why don't you like your legs? It's like, yeah, but my legs are probably not going to be useful when I'm dead, you know. So, it's just one of these rotten situations that people get themselves into. And well, I didn't get myself into it. I didn't. It's just this fucking country. So yeah. Yeah, I feel like I should do something, but but it's the wrong instinct. It's chronic fatigue syndrome, exhaustion syndrome. Your instincts about them are wrong. Yeah, like, yeah. I don't know, I just don't know. I just wish I had more certainty about the future so I could, time my exhaustion to, like, my profound exhaustion to occur at the right time, because my real fear is that it hits when I'm still in this fucking house and I can't do anything, and then if like a bailiff or cops turn up, like there's no way they would understand that someone's in a physical fucking CFS collapse. There's no fucking way that they would, and you certainly wouldn't be able to explain to them anyway. They wouldn't see it, they wouldn't understand it as an illness. Yeah, so it's very scary to live in this world when it's not funny, like justice is there for the people who least need it. So crazy.